In November of 2019, we trained a group of Premier agents on a new model called Champion. To give you a sense of what Champion is, so when an agent is first hired, they're sort of hired as a general agent, so they can take a certain kind of call. But then as they've been around for a while and they've gotten their feet wet with those general calls, we tend to move them as they advance into special groups that service special kinds of calls or special kinds of customers. The Premier group, think of it this way. The general population is taking general kinds of calls, and the Premier agents are serving a higher touch customer. And then the Champion agents are like another tier of service. So like the best of the best of the best. When this began, we really needed to make sure that they were the best of the best of the best. We developed a 2-day ILT, which would hopefully give these agents the knowledge that they needed to be these excellent reps to the member groups who had bought the Champion service. What happened after that initial training in June of 2020, we partnered with the Champion supervisor to send the current Champion reps an M-level knowledge booster. Really simple. It contained 8 questions. It was about key concepts that they learned back in November of 2019. And so it was nothing new. This was something that they should have learned back then, and they should have been practicing regularly over the last couple months since they had become champions. What did we find? Surprising. After we sent out this booster, this is what we found. A couple of things. Questions answered about Champion service were answered correctly only 66% of the time, and this was the lowest scoring category of type of question. More specifically, less than half of the reps got this important question right. If a member's information is added to the repeat contact report, who's assigned the customer's issue? One of the most important tasks an agent does is to follow up on questions and own a customer's issue. So if I call in, I'm a customer, I have independence insurance, I'm calling in and the agent isn't able to resolve my issue, okay, I hang up and then I call back in and then I call back in again. My name goes on this repeat contact report and somebody's got to handle that. And the question was geared around who handles that issue. And there was this big misunderstanding about who was supposed to handle a repeat issue. And this was letting customer issues slip through the cracks and nobody knew who owned it. A member goes on the repeat contact report only if they've called multiple times. This indicates that they clearly have an issue that isn't getting resolved. In contact centers, all my friends out there who support them, you know that there's a huge customer service experience no-no. And many of the reps were assuming that someone else is responsible for follow-up, which meant that no one was following up, and this had to be addressed immediately.
Which meant impact to CSAT, which meant
yes,
continued calls.
My friend Ashley knows. She knows. But I want to pause for a moment here, right? And Ashley, you're right to say that, because I think you really have to listen. If you're eating lunch and you've been only mildly paying attention so far, let's pause for a moment, because this is really important to land. Imagine that we hadn't found out that knowledge gap existed. That issue could have lingered indefinitely and caused all kinds of downstream negative business impacts. So the first thing that we did was notify the supervisor and the manager of the Champion team of the knowledge gaps, specifically that repeat caller report question. Then they were able to meet with their team immediately to address the misunderstanding and get everybody on the same page. The designer and trainer benefits are clear as well. With this simple metric, we begin to transform into that data-driven learning team. The title of this whole thing. Not only are we empowering the business to take action with this information, but it takes the guesswork out of the key question that we ask our learners, which is, do they get it? The designer was able to make an update to the ILT curriculum to emphasize the problematic key points. And we informed the trainer of this knowledge gap so that during the next training, they could address and hammer home this very important key concept. The important thing here is it's so simple. Our trainers and designers don't need to be data scientists to understand the benefits. It's immediately apparent. Recall on the last slide, you could really easily see the correct response rate for each question. It's laid out there. It's very simple. And the one at the bottom is like, oh, less than half of the people are understanding that. And you don't need to be a data scientist to see very simply where there's a problem and where there isn't. It couldn't be some complicated thing. It has to be straightforward, and this is. If it's overwhelming and confusing, we can't confidently take action.